Welcome to year 2 of A Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.
Hosted by 4-time Emmy-nominated producer
Frank Pace. And retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest, actor co-star on the sitcom Murphy Brown, Grant Shaud.
My brother. I don't know what it is, Frank. It's got to be the studio or something. As soon as I look at you, I start laughing.
Yeah. Well, it just got me thinking, listening to the end of the song, how much, it's a retired New York veteran and Vietnam vet, how much longer do you think that'll be relevant?
I don't know. It's funny how it seems like everything I've ever done is in the past, like he's over the hill. If things really get better with age, I think I'm slowly approaching magnificence.
Slowly. Well, I'll tell you who's slowly approaching magnificence is 2 firemen in Jacksonville, Florida. Started a business 25 years ago, a sub shop.
Firehouse Subs.
Firehouse Subs. And they just recently sold it for $1 billion.
Wow, did they hit the jackpot, huh?
You think?
Wow. Firehouse Subs.
Firehouse Subs.
What's the deal with that? Subs, poor boys in New Orleans, they call them subs out here, right? In California,
yeah. Wedges in New York.
Wedges and heroes.
Heroes
in New York. I always got a hero sandwich. The whole deal with a good hero is the bread.
Absolutely. I agree totally. That's why a lot of those places I don't like because they got horseshit bread.
Yeah, Subways. The bread sucks.
The bread does suck. Brought to you by our former sponsor.
We can shoot for that. Hey, Subway, your bread sucks.
In Billy's opinion and in my opinion,
the bread sucks. It does suck.
Well, it's funny because Firehouse Subs was sold for $1 billion. My Jay Thomas and my good friend Tony, I'm blanking on his last name.
Jay Thomas was your good friend. Anyway.
Yeah, Jay Thomas was my good friend.
Tony was like maybe.
Tony was a maybe.
If you remembered his last name, he'd be a better friend.
But I told you I was having trouble talking today. Oh. He started Blimpies.
Oh. He started Blimpies?
Started Blimpies.
Oh, I would remember his last name.
Yep.
You could always hit him up for a few bucks,
He started Blimpies.
Wow.
And he made a nice living on Blimpies, and he sold it.
Their bread sucks. And all those sub shops. I've never eaten a Firehouse Sub. Have you?
No.
I wonder how that bread is.
Probably sucks. But Blimpies bread doesn't suck. There was nothing about anything Blimpies that sucks. Tony Conza.
Tony Conza. But the bread is good, Blimpies?
Bread's good in Blimpies.
That's the only thing that makes a fucking good hero. I mean, that's it. That's the whole deal, is the bread. I mean, you go to you get a hero, what we call a hero. You know why they call them poor boys in New Orleans? Because they actually gave them away during the war, when things were rough. So for the poor fellas, the poor boys.
Yep.
And again, I love poor boys. I mean, because you get the shrimp, you get the oysters, fried, but the bread.
Tony Conza started Blimpies.
Wow.
And we had a neighborhood deli in my neighborhood. That's where you have a neighborhood deli. Whenever we would go to get a wedge, he would get a loaf of Italian bread and use that. He would cut it in half, slice it, put the stuff in, and great sandwich because they had great bread.
Bread. It's all about Blimpies bread sucks, man. I think it sucks.
Did you have a Blimpie? Why don't you stop saying Blimpies bread sucks? Because even if it does suck, I said as a friend of mine.
Let me ask you a question about this guy. He's a friend of yours.
I think Blimpie's got great bread.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go with it then. They got great bread. He's a friend of yours, right? Is he a pessimist or an optimist? Because if he's a pessimist, I'm going to say he's got great bread just in case I want to borrow money from him someday, because I always try and borrow money from pessimists. They never expect it back.
He's a pessimist.
Right, good. He's got great bread, too, if you ever go to Blimpies.
Yeah, and the good thing is probably he won't see this show. And he's been out of Blimpies for a while. He sold it and he's been retired for about 10 or 15 years.
But $1 billion, man, these 2 firemen made. That's amazing. What a score.
Do
you know where they were firemen? With Florida, or where were they?
In Florida.
They were Florida.
Well, I think they were New York firemen who moved down to Florida.
What a score. You know what? If a guy would have came to me with that same scheme, I would have turned him down. I would have said, nah.
Of course.
That'll never work. What are you, crazy? Nah. Yeah, I would have sank that guy. I could have sank him.
On another more dubious note, 100,000 people OD'd this year.
Fentanyl?
More than people died in car crashes or...
You think that's the fentanyl thing?
I think so.
100,000, and probably a lot to do with COVID too, right? People are depressed. They're at home. They're taking drugs. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
No, that's...
Oh, gun violence.
What'd you say, Derek?
100,000 people died of COVID. That's more than gun violence and...
Of overdose, you mean 100,000?
Yeah, 100,000 people.
That's more
than gun violence. Why don't I just pick it up and read it? And gun violence and car crashes combined.
You know, I 100,000 triggers a memory because I had seen recently that 100,000 veterans since 9/11. I don't know why that date is the indicator, but 100,000 veterans have committed suicide since 9/11. Committed suicide.
Yeah.
But you're talking about that fentanyl, man. I saw a girl, actually a comic I know. I only performed with her once or twice, but she was with 3 other comics, and they were snorting coke. And 2 of them died because they was cut with fentanyl.
Yep.
And then I saw the same thing happened on the East Coast. Like this was out here in LA, and the same thing happened on the East Coast. A guy was snorting coke and died because it was cut with fentanyl. Now, my question is, I would think that fentanyl costs more than coke. Why would you cut? I mean, when you usually cut a drug, the way they work it is they take coke and they cut it with baby laxative or something, right? Sometimes when you get bad coke, just for anybody out there, as an information thing, you get bad coke, you feel like you got to take a dump right away because it's cut with baby laxative. And you know the way you can tell good coke is if you touch it and you rub your fingers together, it's oily. It's real oily because it comes from shale. They grow it on shale at high altitudes. And anything that's powdery, it means it's cut with that. You know, anything that's still left, it doesn't get absorbed. But why would they cut coke with, I would think fentanyl costs more than coke.
Well, guess what? It doesn't.
It doesn't. It's real cheap.
Of course. How could it, your cost of goods sold would go up?
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't cut something with something that's more expensive. And that's scary. That's really scary to me that fentanyl is that cheap because
you know
what do you say? It's 100 times more powerful than morphine?
Yeah, you know what's more scary that people are actually literally putting it in. There are human beings lacing good cocaine with fentanyl that they know are going to kill somebody just for a buck.
Yeah. I mean, look. You know, that's another thing. Back to the vaccine. I don't know what's in it. Meanwhile, these are the same guys that you got a nickel bag of this, you got a dime bag of this, some mud on the corner. You know, I mean,
look at Derek rolling his eyes again.
He hates when I go to the vaccine.
Have you been vaccinated yet?
No, he's not into it.
Nope.
Nope, and he refuses to get vaccinated. But you going to get a booster?
I already got it.
You got it already?
Yeah.
You were up for it?
Yeah.
How old you going to be?
Am
I clear?
It's 6 months. 6 months from the second.
Just so I'm good. I got to go get it before I go to New York. You know? My daughter will insist on that shit anyway.
Well, enough of this. Let's bring on Grant.
All right, yeah, let's bring on Grant. Sounds
Grant
good.
Shaud, terrific actor from Murphy Brown. You know him from his years on Murphy Brown. Younger, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. He's a great guy, great actor, and I've known him for 33 years.
That's a good show, that Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Why is he laughing?
Yeah.
If you're trying to make a fool out of me, it's too late.
Oh. Derek, can you bring on Grant Shaud?
Uno más, por favor.
Uno más. He's a terrific actor. You know him from Murphy Brown. Younger, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Drew Carey Show. A lot of work. This guy's just done a load of work. And I'm happy to have him. My friend, Grant Shaud. How are you, my friend?
Great. It's good to see you guys.
There's say hello to Billy O'Connor.
How are you, Grant? My pleasure.
Derek.
Nice to know you.
Derek Harris.
Big salute there.
You are the third member of the cast of Murphy Brown to join us, having had Joey Riggs and Faith Ford. Now we've got Miles Silverberg, Grant Shaud.
You were saving me.
You're going deep into that well, Frank.
We're
Going deep into the bullpen.
Yeah.
A left-hander, the man says.
A left-hander, deep into the pen. How are you, my
Yeah.
friend? Can you believe it's been 33 years since we met?
Oh man! And I'm trying to think of the moment we met. Would it have been at the table read? Would that have been the moment we met?
No, we met before that. We met, actually, Marty Nedboy was a PA. Marty's. We've talked about Marty a lot. And Grant was coming in for an audition from New York, and he brought like a toothpaste and a pair of underwear with him. He didn't even bring a change of clothes because he figured it would go like the way most auditions go, and he would not get the role.
Not too optimistic, huh?
He was not too optimistic. And when he got the role, I sent Grant out with Marty to pick up some clothes and shoes and everything else so that he could stay for the pilot. So that's the way we met.
Frank gave me the allowance.
Yep, he had an allowance.
Is that right? They get
Gave me my
a
allowance.
certain allowance that you're allowed to spend per week, per month, or what is it?
Well, I came out with, what I thought was going to happen was I was going to read for it, and then they were going to fly me back to LA. I had a round trip ticket. So I only bought, 2-3 days worth of clothes. And then once they cast me, they said it was, I think, on a Wednesday, and we were going to start shooting on a Monday. And they said, we don't want you going all the way back to New York and then flying back. We're just going to put you up in a hotel. And I said, I don't have any clothes. And that's when Frank stepped in.
That's what Frank stepped in. I said, you were the last man cast.
What?
On Murphy Brown. Hey, Grant.
Is that all that?
So why don't you tell about the first time you met Candice?
That would have been at Diane's house. And oh my God, I'm thinking back on it. It was such a whirlwind. So you guys kept me in LA. You put me in a hotel, and then we had the table read for the pilot on Monday morning. And I had heard all these stories about people getting fired at table reads. So I was terrified about that. And then so Diane had a cast reading at her house the night before the table read, just so we could all get together and read it together. And our first time reading it wasn't in front of the studio and the network and all that stuff. So I walked into Diane's kitchen, and Candice is standing there, and she went, Grant, and
Wow.
I guess because she had already seen the audition tape, and she's one of those people, and I know Frank can attest to this, is like when she puts her attention on you, you're the only person in the room. Everything else fades out, and it's just Candice Bergen, and she just has that sort of I don't know what to call it, just presence, that just makes everything else go away.
Pretty classy, though. Pretty classy for her to do that. For you're a young guy, right? You were what, 26?
20, yes. I'm sorry. Can you guys hear that phone ringing?
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. It'll
right.
stop when nobody answers it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and that's the other thing about Candice is whether it was me at I think I was 26 at the time, maybe 27, or my dad, who was just like, oh my God, Candice Bergen, like she just spanned generations.
Yeah.
Her appeal just, everybody I know, men, women, young, older, her appeal just goes across the board.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I'll tell you a story about, we had the table reading. The real table reading was on Monday. And after the table reading, the network and the studio gets together and they give notes. And Greg Mayday was a CBS guy at the time, and Larry Little was the executive vice president of Warner Brothers. And Mayday said something about Candice's performance at the table. And Larry Little said, Mayday, if you ever give a fucking note again about an actor's performance at the table, I'll rip your fucking heart out. And that was the way the show started. And made it didn't give another note all week.
Wow.
Wow, I never heard that one.
Yeah,
That's
I've never told it before.
Wow. Well, Joey Regalbuto, when we had him on here, he had said that he had saw Candice a couple of times during rehearsals, sweatpants, whatever. But the day of the shooting, when she came out of that elevator, it was Candice Bergen. It was like the presence was overwhelming. She was.
It's fun. I have my own sort of story like that, where after I read, so they flew me out here to read, and I went in and I read for Diane and Joel and Barnett first in Diane's office, and that was a load of fun. That went great. And the next, they said, okay, you're going to be reading for the network tomorrow over at CBS, and they said to me, they said, look, you're going to be going into a windowless room with a bunch of executives sitting there with their arms crossed, not laughing. There's going to be no oxygen in the room, and we're going to be sitting in the front row, and we want you to perform for us. We want you to ignore what's going on behind us, and we want you to perform for us. And so I showed up at CBS. It was like a late afternoon. And I go into the room, and sure enough, that's what happened. And I just sort of choked. I didn't give nearly the audition that I gave for Diane the day before. And they said, "Okay, go wait outside." And I was walking out of the room, and I looked back, and as the door was closing behind me, I saw Diane kind of looking at me, waiting for me to get out of the room. And then I watched her turn towards them, and I knew she was giving them the riot act. I knew, and apparently what happened was they as soon as the door closed, they said, "Keep looking." And she said no.
Wow. So she went to bat for you, huh? Thank God.
She's the reason I got it. If it wasn't for her standing up for me, I wouldn't have gotten the part.
Now, you're 26 years old, man. You're only in the racket 4 years, right? You're only acting. This is a huge break. This is dollars and cents. This is crazy break for you. I mean, who hits it like you did after only 4 years, right?
It was crazy. I sort of had crazy from the moment I decided to be an actor and moved up to New York, I had crazy stuff happen. I was on like Broadway 5 months after I moved up to New York, and with like really no resume to speak of and really no acting experience to speak of.
What show were you in?
I was understudying a play called Torch Song Trilogy.
Oh,
which had run for like 3 years.
Huge hit, huge.
Yes. And I understudied Craig Sheffer, who ended up being Brad Pitt's brother on A River Runs Through It. And his film career was kind of taken off. And I was understudying this kid, Chris Garton, who was like a New York City high school kid. And I was understudying the two of them. And that was crazy because I had gotten an agent 3 days before that. I was waiting tables. I was sort of keeping my ear to the ground about, what are some agencies that might take a guy like me who doesn't, who's right off the bus. And I made a list of about 10 of them. And I went out to try to get an agent. And, they had signs on the door that said, don't knock. And I would knock, and they would open the door and say, "Can't you read?" and slam the door in my face. But I walked into this one agency and got into a nice conversation with the woman at the front desk. And then it was a 2-room office, and the guy came out of the other room and he said, "Who are you?" And I went, "Oh, my name's Grant. I'm looking for an agent." And he picked up my picture and resume. He said, "University of Richmond. I'm from Richmond." And I went, "Oh." And he said, "Well, maybe we'll have you come in and do a monologue." So they had me.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, they
luck, lightning.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
And I think you guys would attest to this, right? There's because I read If Lips Could Talk, and Billy coming in to meet you, Frank, in the office, and what that sort of one-on-one personal meeting, and here you guys are all these years later. So there's something. I just think there's something to be said for personal contact.
Yep.
We haven't had one interview, woman or man, on this show that's successful that didn't say luck had everything to do with it. Not one. Everybody being in the right place at the right time. And we often talk about not how many people see you, if the right person sees you.
Yep.
It's,
Right.
And, going back to Murphy Brown was written by Diane English during the writer's strike, or right up until the writer's strike. She finished it, and then the writer's strike happened. So we went through all of the pilot shoot with Diane's first draft. So if Diane had rewritten it, maybe it wouldn't have been as good. But she didn't rewrite it at all, and she won an Emmy for her first draft.
And the first draft of everything is shit, according to Hemingway.
Yeah, and if you talk about luck, if Murphy Brown had been shit, Grant would have been 13 and out, and he would have been back on the street. But Murphy Brown was anything but shit, and ran all of those years, and Grant was an established star by the time Murphy Brown was over. Just like me with Head of the Class. If Head of the Class had gone 13 episodes, I would have been back on the street, and I wouldn't have produced Murphy Brown. So,
your business is really hit and miss, man.
It's
You got it. Once you get the break, you got to be ready to walk through, but then you got to get lucky again. The show's got to be good.
So we're doing the pilot, and we're doing the introductions before the show. And Marty comes, I said, where's Grant? We're all lined up to go out. Nobody knows where Grant is. Where's Grant? You seen him? Joe hadn't seen him. Faith hadn't seen him. We didn't ask Candice because she would, and then Marty comes in. He goes, Grant's in the bathroom, throwing up. Wow. Did you often get nerves, or did you go to the bathroom and throw up before every show?
Well, either end. Do you know what I mean?
Feel free to talk. We're big guys on the First Amendment here, Grant. Go ahead.
I think that was good enough.
Well, I just heard Frank say shit. So
Montezuma's revenge. It was like it just kept coming out both sides. I got you.
Yeah. It was. It would depend on the night, And but yeah, nerves were definitely an issue. And what? You guys saw that movie, right, with Mark Wahlberg about what was that? Where Dick Vermeil, and
football coach. The phenom or whatever it was called.
Yeah. Vince Papale.
Vince Papale.
Mark Wahlberg played Vince Papale, and there's that scene where the two of them are throwing up side by side in stalls before their first game, and they both come out and they're rinsing their mouths at the same time, and it's So I'm in good company, I think.
Yeah, well, also my friend Howard Morris on Show of Shows, he and Carl Reiner used to go underneath the stage and throw up before every show. They were so nervous. I mean, they were doing 38 live shows, 90-minute shows a week. But they were so nervous that Howie Morris and Carl Reiner would go and throw up together before every show.
I got to ask Grant, you've done television mostly, but you've also done movies. You've done Broadway. Does that ever go away, that nervousness? Does it ever, especially live? I mean, I would think it'd be worse. Is it worse on Broadway than it is in television or movies?
You're absolutely right. I think in live theater it is worse. But that's the thing about doing Murphy. That was live theater. We just had cameras between us and the audience. So as an actor, it was the closest thing you could get to live theater, which was amazing for me because that's what I had come from. So, the nerves were the same because it's people are there watching you. You're in the moment. You want to be there for them. With that cast and everything that went into the production of that show, you just didn't want to be the weak link. You didn't want to let everybody down. So it was just the nerves of failing, I think, more than anything else. They never go away from me.
And I guess that was magnified after the first year when you've got 6 Emmy nominations and won 4 of them for a show. Was that correct?
Yeah, I mean, all of that was thrilling, and we just felt like everybody was on our side. I mean, we felt like everybody was on our side from the pilot on, because you know, we started getting word from, you know, CBS and Warner's that, you know, everybody was thrilled with the pilot after it was all shot and cut together and everything like that. So it kind of became thrilling after that, but always there was this bar you had to reach and this standard you had to live up to, which Diane created, and thank God. And it was really an unspoken, you know, I think thing that you just didn't want to be the weak link.
Yeah, and
Not that. Yeah.
And for a couple of years, you were the number one show on television. You know, out of all the Nielsen ratings every week, number one after number one came Murphy Brown. Number one, Murphy Brown. Number one, Murphy Brown. That's an incredible standard to live up to.
Let me ask both you guys, what kind of audience are you looking at here? 500 people or so in the
250.
theater live?
250.
250?
Of our best friend.
So,
Well,
so you're coming out, and of course, every week it's a different script. So it's not like Broadway where you could probably do it in your sleep after 2 years or so. This is a different script every week and a different live audience every week. So you really got to be on your game.
once you go through the process of a week for Billy and Derek and the audience, Grant, take it Monday through Friday.
We would start on Monday morning with a table read, and then we would start rehearsing, and we'd start blocking out the scenes, scene by scene. And you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday were really for us to just sort of work out the scenes and bounce off of each other. And by Wednesday afternoon, we would have the run through. We would have a run through for the writers, and
And the network also.
and the network. Yes, thank you. So that they would get to see, you know, what was working for them, what wasn't, notes they wanted to give us, things they wanted to change in the script. And this was also a Diane thing. By Thursday, it was pretty locked in, which I think she really did for us, so that we didn't have to be worried about a lot of last minute changes and changing lines and stuff like that. So as of Thursday, when we would start camera blocking, and that's when you come in at 9 a.m. and you run the scenes for the crew and all the camera guys and the grips and the gaffers and all that, and they would, you know, mark your place. You would run the scene, and they would mark your place of where you land, and then they, you know, focus the cameras from where you're going to land. And Thursday tends to be very technical. And then Friday we come in, we do another run through for everybody, and then we rehearse for the cameras again. Then we get a dinner break, and then it's showtime.
Wow.
On Friday night.
And you almost always do the shows from beginning to end. Now we're starting to, you know, pre-tape a few scenes the day before and just play them for the audience. But then we would do the show from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. On Thursday, you said was the tech night. Is that like when you come out on the stage, is there like actual marks, like you got to hit this mark and stop? Or is that how it goes? Like,
Yeah, they put little
pieces of tape?
Yeah, and each actor's got a different color, or each scene's got a different color. So we've got 4 cameras on the shows. So camera 1 or the A camera will go to yellow tape in scene A. All the cameras will go to yellow tape in scene A. The red tape in the B scene. A different color tape for every scene.
Let me ask Grant a question as somebody who's not an actor. When you're acting, especially live like that on stage or in front of a live audience, are you thinking about your line and waiting for the other guy's mouth to stop moving, or are you reacting? Yeah, or are you reacting to him speaking? You know what I mean? I can see myself saying, okay, my line is this, and as soon as his lips stop talking, then I got to hit you with my line. Are you actually listening? I mean, what are you doing? I'm curious.
That's a great question, because it's all of the above. It's sort of everything you just said, because there's the we talked about the terror earlier, right? Of like, I don't
want to forget your line. Yeah.
I don't want to be the one who goes up. I don't want to be the one who stops the flow of the scene. So there's that. I don't want to be the one who doesn't hit my mark. So there's the technical aspects of that. And like you said, we're learning a new script every week. So the lines are always an issue. I remember after what I liked to do after we were done on Thursday nights is I would like to stay after and just run my lines on the set and go to my marks and say my lines and stuff like that. Just, like a drill, just kind of drill it in so that on Friday, when you're out there and you're in the scene with the other actor or the other actors, you're not worrying about, am I hitting my mark? What's my line? Because the less I can worry about that and the more I can let them affect me, the better it's going to be for my performance. Because they will put me in the moment. If I can let myself alone and pay attention to them, I will react to them and just use the lines they've given me, and then you got Miles. But, if I'm all in my head about what's my next line and when does his line stop and am I on my mark, that can really take me out of the moment.
Yeah, the performance is going to suffer. He's got it.
I'll tell you 2 stories about that. A lot of times on shows, some shows more than others, the lines don't work. And then you've got rewrites. And one night on Suddenly Susan, the scene didn't work or the lines didn't work. So they rewrote the whole scene. And Judd Nelson had a tremendous amount of dialogue to do in that. So they came out and they gave him the changes, which they had to learn on the fly. Because, you're doing a show. And you're doing a show in front of an audience. And Judd looked at me and he said, "So much for subtext." So it's just a matter of getting the lines in the order that the writers wrote them. You want to get the words right. You don't worry about subtext. Whereas on Thursday night, there's time for subtext. On Friday night, when they give you the changes on the fly, you're just trying to get the words right. I remember I acted one time. And I acted in the movie Babe Ruth with Stephen Lang. And my line was, "How you feeling, babe?" So I was ready to do my line. And at the last moment, the director said, "Now find the camera." Well, I wasn't prepared to find the camera. I was prepared to do my line. So I was always looking for the camera and not thinking about my line. And I said, how the fuck do these guys do it week after week? That's where the training comes in. I think that's where the actor's training comes in, is performing for the camera.
In your defense, though, Frank, I don't think there's anything harder than one line.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild. You got to elaborate on that. You can't leave us hanging with that. Why?
I think you're being nice.
You would think that's you would think
I think
that's
you're being
easy.
nice.
I had one line in a movie called The January Man. With
I remember that movie.
And it was a scene. Yeah, we shot it in New York. And it was a scene with Rod Steiger is playing the mayor of New York. Harvey Keitel is the police commissioner. They're
Kevin Kline's in that
Kevin
too.
Kline. Yes.
Kevin
yes,
Kline,
Bill. Yes, Billy. Kevin Kline. And I think Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, it is. And they're playing, they're doing a press conference on the top steps of City Hall. And I'm the reporter shouting out the question. And it was a bit of a run-on question, but it was one line. And I kept flubbing it because I knew it was like the one thing I had to do, and all my focus was on that. And I was just choking it and choking. And at one point, Rod Steiger looks at me and goes, "It ain't easy, is it?"
Yeah. That's something, though, because of the one line. You're getting back to what we were talking about before. You're not reacting to anything. You're just focused on the line and delivering the line. And it's like thinking about how to walk. Yeah. I would imagine. If you think, how do I walk? Do I put this foot in the left? You can't walk. Right. You just walk. Just do it.
I'll tell you a quick story. At Pebble Beach golf tournament, I was playing in a golf tournament with George Lopez and Lee Trevino. So I was nervous as all get out. I mean, I hit the ball left, hitting the ball right. On the third hole, Lee said, Frankie, relax. they're not here to see you.
Dead right. Dead right.
Yeah.
Dead right.
Yep, dead right. So Grant,
I remember that from the book.
yep, yep. Grant, why don't you tell me a few of your favorite episodes?
Oh wow. Two popped to mind right away, other than actually three. Other than the pilot. The first was the first episode of the second year called The Brothers Silverberg.
Right.
And I'm forgetting, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, the actor who played my brother. Great actor. He's on The Closer.
Was it Tony Kanza who invented Blimpie?
Oh my God! And I know him so well, and I can't believe you know how this happens, right?
Yeah, man. Listen,
Yeah.
It's happening more and more often.
Just wait. It gets longer and longer.
Hey, Grant! Every time you lean forward, your camera blacks out.
I don't think it's him. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So
Don't worry about it. You're off the hook.
okay.
And then you.
Good. But the Brothers Silverberg, the storyline was, and my brother comes to town to visit, and he and Candice have a romantic connection, and it just makes me wild with jealousy. And I just had so much to do in that episode, and it was just
John Tenney. Sorry.
Thank you. Oh my God, John Tenney. Thank you. What's funny? It's like I can remember. It's like he plays Kira Sedgwick's husband on The Closer. Like I can remember, all his roles. I just couldn't remember his name. And So the whole episode was basically about me being in a jealous fit over the fact that Candice and my brother are having a romantic dalliance.
And the second one?
Second one was an episode written by Russ Woody called "Here's to You, Mrs. Kinsella." And Miles has an affair with the head of the network's wife.
Was that the head of the network? Wasn't Gary Marshall at that time, was it?
No, it was Alan.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, Alan,
you know who I'm talking about. Yeah, it was. Miles was on a corporate, weekend or something like that. He was away on business and hooks up with this anonymous woman, and they have a weekend fling, and he goes back and tells Murphy about it because he's racked with guilt. And then he goes to her Christmas party and she's there. And I said, the woman's here, the sex woman. And, she hadn't seen me yet. And he goes, Miles, that's no woman. That's Mrs. That's Jean Kinsella's wife. And I think her name was Lois. That's Lois Kinsella. And she managed me to get it out. She manages to get me out of her condo without anybody seeing me. But that was just so much fun to play, because that's a situation you wouldn't normally find Miles in. And then the third one that's coming to my mind was, oh gosh, there's so many. They're all flooding into my head now. We did one where we were away on a corporate retreat. That one was brilliant. I can't remember the name of that one. We did one where Murphy takes me shopping because she can't stand my wardrobe. And I'm in the dressing room and she goes to check on me and I'm naked and she sees me naked. And then it just affects the entire rest of the episode because I'm her boss, but she's seen me naked. And so, they gave me all these all of us, these amazing situations to be in.
And didn't Donzig and Peterman write an episode for you called Dreidel? The Dreidel episode? Was that a Christmas episode?
That one was, I can't believe I didn't remember that one. That one was brilliant, where we made a pact that none of us would buy Christmas presents for each other. And then I think Joe breaks down first and starts buying everybody Christmas. And then I found out he bought everybody Christmas presents. So I'm like, they're going to hate the Jewish guy for not buying Christmas presents. So we're all frantically running around on Christmas Eve trying to buy Christmas presents at the last second, which was another just great situation to put all of us in.
Yeah, you had a tremendous cast. And then you went away for a number of years and you came back in 2018. What was it like the first time you saw Murphy's living room. You, Candice, Joe, Faith. What was it like with the first time you saw the recreated living room in New York?
Well, I think like Faith told you, it was so emotional. I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't, especially being in New York. And Frank, the way you just took the whole thing piece by piece and rebuilt it in New York, I wasn't expecting. It was like it was like we were back on the set in LA, and 20 years later, and you don't even know the full impact of what's in there until something triggers you emotionally like
Wow.
that.
Yeah.
It's like I couldn't talk.
Yeah, they were all in tears.
Wow, all the friendships, all the long-lasting relationships, all the memories, it just comes flooding back.
Yeah, because
20 years later.
It was a line that you wrote for Lips. It was like you spend more time with the people in your cast than you often do with your family during a successful run of a television series.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, you don't know how much you love your brother until somebody picks on your brother.
Yeah.
And then it then it all comes up, and it's like that, with people you work with that long, and and blood, sweat, and tears, and and occasional squabble, and hugs and kisses and tears, and and then you don't see each other for 20. I mean, we all stayed in touch, and then you're all back there, and it just all comes back like the people you grew up with.
You never really know what's going to trigger an emotion, but when you see something like that, it just you're not prepared for it. You don't realize what's going to happen. We talked about the Jay Thomas thing when the Vietnam come back to me out of all things. That movie.
Mr. Holland's Opus.
Mr. Holland's Opus. And that for some reason I never reacted to Vietnam. 20 years later, I'm watching this movie. I start crying for no reason. It's like you don't know what's going to trigger
the death of the drummer.
Yeah.
Yes.
But let me ask you, you've done, well, obviously TV has been super good to you. I mean, that was like a remarkable run that you get at 26 years old to get a run like that. But you've done theater and you've done movies. Which venue do you prefer?
They all have their benefits. Nothing can match a live audience and the experience in front of a live audience. I've been in 2 Broadway plays, so my experience on Broadway is fairly limited. But I belong to a theater in New York called the Ensemble Studio Theater over on in Hell's Kitchen over on 52nd near 11th Avenue. And that was my home. And, by the time Miles came along, that's where I had gotten all my training. Because every reading that I was asked to do, it's this like 500-person membership of playwrights, directors, actors, everybody from John Turturro to John Voight to Kevin Bacon to, and playwrights like Christopher Durang and like everybody has done something at one time or another at EST. It's been around for over 50 years. And when I went and saw my first one-act play marathon there. I saw this one-act play with Sarah Jessica Parker, Elias Koteas, J.T. Walsh, and it was just one of 5 one-acts. And you're in a 99-seat theater, and there's 2 sides, so you're kind of like surrounding the stage, and you're right on top of the actors. It is so intimate.
Wow.
And I remember seeing that one act and going, I gotta be a member here. And I managed to get cast in a play up on their 6th floor theater. And so they got to see me work, and then I applied for membership and I got in. And the great thing about that, as just a lab, as a gym, it was like a gym. Any play that anybody asked me to read, anything I could audition for there, any play reading that we did, staged reading, I was just always doing theater. And that would just sort of, when Miles came along, I went, I know who this guy is. I know who this guy is because I had played him in a play at EST. So you just never, as you guys know in your businesses, you got to do all of it because you never know when it's going to be called forward.
Yeah,
right?
and you know, so much of any job is instincts. Like
Yes.
like with Billy being a fireman, he instinctively would run into a burning building to save a person's life. Now, what we did and what we do is not doesn't have such dire consequences as life or death, but instincts play a big part. You have to have the instincts to do any job, and Billy had the instincts to be a firefighter, and you know, you had the instincts to be an actor, and I don't know what
The
I had the
training
instincts
kicks
to
in.
do.
I mean, you know, like you're talking about the gym. It's a gym because you're working in a theater, and the more you work there, of course, obviously, the better you're going to get at it. But it's the same thing. You're a firefighter when the shit hits the fan. You know, 99% of the time it's routine, but when the shit hits the fan, your training kicks in. You hardly remember it. It's like being in a fight. You know, you get in a fight when you're a kid. You don't remember the fight until it's over. You don't even feel the pain until it's over. You start saying, "Did that guy hit me in the eye? My eye is killing me. You know, did he get me in the eye?" You know, you don't think about it. The training kicks in. Combat, you know, it's the same thing. In combat, you just hope to God you get it right, but the training kicks in.
Yeah.
And like being in the situation you were in, live theater, I can see how that's got to be. I got to ask you a question about live theater. If you're doing a line, whatever line it be, just hypothetical. And the next night, you don't do the line quite the same way, right? You do, and maybe even you lose a word or something that way. Will that fly? Can you do that can you build on that for the next night because you think it worked better? Or do you alter your performance every time you go out there?
Sometimes, you know, I think you try to put yourself in the moment as much as you can, where, like we talked about earlier, you know, where you're leaving yourself alone and you're not thinking about how the audience is reacting, and they don't feel like they're loving this. You know what I mean? When I get into my head, it takes me out of the moment. And if I'm lucky enough to be in the moment, sometimes like I'll have a moment with the other actor, and you're right, you can build on that. You're like, ooh, you know, I want to leave. I hope that happens tomorrow. You know,
Right.
The thing about the theater audience is they're always the extra character in the play. Like that's why no two plays are the same, because the audience that night and what the audience is giving you completely affects the way that play goes that night.
Wow.
Affects everything about it.
It's interesting because, you know, if you blow a line, you can always save it as long as you get back to the cue line for the actor, for the other actor. Yes. As long as he hears his cue line, if you're supposed to say, and then the actor hears his cue, he goes with it.
Right. So you just got to make sure you give him the.
You got to give him the cue.
It's funny what you say about the audience doing stand-up comedy, and I did a little bit of stand-up comedy, nothing to write home about, but you can tell a joke, and it kills. And the next night doing the joke exactly the same way with the same reflection, and crickets.
Yeah.
Depending on the audience.
Hey, Grant, you know, you mentioned Billy mentioned Jay Thomas, Mr. Holland's Opus. I know Jay did a number of Murphy Browns, and he won 2 Emmys for the role of Jerry Gold. But I'm not going to ask you about that. I'm going to ask you about a play you did with Jay in New York that Woody Allen directed. What was that like?
Well, I can't believe you're asking me that because I literally was just about to talk about it.
Relatively speaking?
Yes. Wait, no, that wasn't relatively speaking. It was the one. It was called Writer's Block.
Okay.
And I've been lucky enough to do 2 plays with Woody, and the first one was called Writer's Block. And Jay and I, you know, were in the play together. And you know, the reason I was going to bring up that play was you talked about going up on a line. There's an actress named Heather Burns who she's been in a bunch of films, and she was playing my wife. And one night I went up. I mean, I went up and I had no idea what my next line was. And she kind of stood there for a little bit, got a little bit of a smile on her face. And you know, a couple seconds went by, which felt like 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And then she went, "Do you mean blah, 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 blah?" And I went, "Yes, blah, 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 blah."
Oh, wow. Great. She fed you. She bailed you out.
She literally fed me the line. But Jay, you know, Frank, I think I already told you the story. one night I sat right next. We had this communal dressing room, and it was Jay and me and Paul Reiser and BB Newirth. We had an amazing cast, and I sat next to Jay, and Jay goes, "I'm gonna lose my sight. I'm gonna go blind tonight." And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I'm gonna go blind tonight. My character's gonna go blind. And I went, okay, Jay. You know, I had no idea what he was talking about. And then we're out there, and there's at one point in the play, I come out with a gun, and I threaten everybody with a gun, and they all back up to the other side of the room, and they're basically pleading for their life. And I'm standing there with the gun. I come out with the gun, and it's like mayhem, and they all back up to the back of the other side of the stage, and they're all pleading for their life. And Jay's in the middle of all of them going, like pretending he can't see. That was Jay Thomas.
Just threw a big curve at everybody, right? Deal with it.
Which he could do because he was in the middle of all of them. So it was just for me, and he literally told me he was going to do it, but I had no idea what he was talking about. And then I did a play with Matthew Broderick one time too, and he used to do that stuff all the time. He would do, he would like do stuff with his eyes and like motion, like look at that guy over there, and it's
just to screw you up. Was he doing this because he likes to screw you up, or he was just?
He likes to play. He just likes to. He just likes to have fun.
Was that a big play with Matthew Broderick, or a little workshop play that you did?
It was a great off-Broadway play. It's written by Kenny Lonergan, who won the Oscar for Manchester by the Sea.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
And he and Kenny actually grew up going to school together. So Matthew's pretty much in anything that Kenny does. And it was an off-Broadway. It was an off-Broadway play. We had Kieran Culkin. We had bunch of people in that one too. It was a really great thing to be a part of.
Is that really why people go to New York to do theater? And they do, everybody talks about Broadway, but it sounds to me like you do 15 off-Broadway workshop plays before you even get a chance to practice your craft on Broadway.
Totally. And I can't speak for, because I know there's great training in LA too, but I grew up here outside Philly. And when it came time to, choosing to be an actor, I felt like I was kind of coming to it late because, it was after college and I was, I think 23, 24. And, I know a lot of people had started earlier than that. And so I felt sort of like behind the eight ball. And as much as I wanted to do film and television, I thought I better go up to New York and see if I can get my training up there. And I feel fortunate that theater was the only thing that would have me for my first basically 4 years up there.
Did you ever think about what we would do if we couldn't have made it into this business?
I don't even want to think about it.
I know it's strange. I mean, I can't imagine what we would have done.
I gotta give you guys credit, man. You're really throwing the dice. I mean, and your wives. I mean, they're hanging in with you guys. You don't know if they're going to get a paycheck next week or what. It's takes a lot of balls.
Yeah, but how about being 61 and going to, was it the University of Florida?
Yeah.
to become a writer?
Yeah, I didn't know I was going to be a writer. I just wanted to sober up and, give it a shot. I never went to college. I figured, I'm running past the university. I was living with an academic, and as long as I was staying with her, I was going to be around schools. I said, well, I might as well go. Might as well go, yeah, but sobriety had a lot to do with that too, Yeah, but you guys had a lot of, your wives had a lot of balls. I mean, to stick with you. She didn't know you were gonna, hit the jackpot or whatever.
No, that's true. That's true.
Takes a lot of balls. Even Matty Cullen's wife, I think the same thing. Coach. He wants to be a coach.
He's the coach at Mercy College, who was the athletic director. And he was the coach at Jacksonville University.
You're following your dreams, but she's along for the ride,
And he recommended Billy look me up when he come out to L.A.
Yeah, and you fucking hump.
That fucking.
You said to me 2 weeks ago, you fucking hump. If I would have met you 8 years ago, you'd be a millionaire. You did meet me 8 years
ago. Yeah. So Grant, you've been acting constantly since then. You've done Younger, playing Bob for three or four seasons, and you did Mrs. Maisel. You've done a lot of work. What do you think the future holds for you? Continue your craft. Continue to practice your craft.
Yeah. Yes. I never want to stop acting. I'm having fun, like you guys. I'm having fun writing right now, and that wasn't something I looked to do. It wasn't. It's funny because when I was on Murphy, occasionally, I don't know who it was, but somebody would say to me, "Hey, do you ever want to direct?" And I was like, "Why? I've got the best job in Hollywood. Like, I don't need that headache." And I wish I had a different attitude. Like I wish I had learned how to direct while I was in that environment. That would have been the perfect time to learn cameras and all that stuff. But I didn't plan on writing. It was well after Murphy, and I was kind of minding my own business, and an idea kind of came to me for a screenplay, and it took me 5 years to write it. I don't know if you guys have like huge resistance with writing, but I didn't want to do it. And I found it kind of painful. And finally it was, it's that when the scales go, okay, I'm afraid to do something, but the pain of not doing it becomes greater than the pain of doing it.
Wow.
So when the pain got bad enough, I wrote, I ended up writing this screenplay, and it was about Hollywood, and that was the first thing I wrote. And now I've written a couple pilots and another screenplay set here in my hometown, and I just really enjoy doing it because it's just something I could do by myself and sort of create my own world and the characters in it. And I had the best education a guy could have. I mean, like I'm on Murphy Brown with writers like Gary Danzig and Tom Palmer and Russ Woody and Michael Patrick King and Peter Tolan
and Steve Peterman and Diane English.
Steve Peterman, Diane English. Well, yeah, I mean, I left them out because,
yeah.
Wow.
That's
goes without saying.
Well, you're right what you know, man. You say you're writing something about Philly, you're writing about Hollywood. Well, this is what you know. What you know.
That's why Billy was such a good writing partner for me, because I'm a short attention span writer. So all of our chapters in all three of our books are really short.
Yeah.
They're self-contained chapters. And Lips Could Talk. There was no continuity. And if These Lips Could Talk, there was just a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they'll go on to the next chapter. In Lamar's Gamble, we just wrote really short chapters. And the same thing with Combustible, which was basically based on Billy's life. Which is just all
yeah, it's sort of like, well, when I was in college, I noticed, of course, going to college so late, that kids today have short attention spans, between Twitter and texting. Pretty soon we're going to be barking at each other, really. Nobody wants to talk anymore. It's all, but they're just quick. And I noticed they had short attention spans, so you really have to have self-contained chapters. That's the way. It's a good way to write.
Yep.
A lead and a kicker in every chapter, but still leading towards a conclusion.
Yeah.
But forget about all that. I got to ask you a question. This is driving me crazy. Like I told you, I was a half-assed comedian for a while. I started doing it in college, and I did about 6 or 7 years of it. Had a lot of fun doing it. But at 73, what am I going to be, the darling in the nursing homes? Where am I going to go with this? I'm not going to go on a road with it. But you worked with some monsters. I mean, Eddie Murphy, Louis C.K., right? You worked with Louis C.K., Woody Allen. We have a common perception of these people. Tell me a guy that just not at all like the persona that we have of him. You know what I mean? Like who surprised you the most when you were working with these guys is what I'm asking.
Wow, that's a good question.
And you can also use Murphy Brown had a lot of terrific
anybody that you work with.
John F. Kennedy, Elizabeth
you've
Taylor.
worked with some monsters, some giants, Gabriel Byrne. I mean, anybody that you worked with that just wasn't the perception, the common perception that a layman like me would have, that he's the total opposite of, Like Eddie Murphy, I would think is.
Well, I'll give Grant. I know Grant's thinking about it. I'll give you my perception. It was Don Rickles. Don Rickles is the most polite, most wonderful, most thought-giving, most God-fearing person you ever met. He's totally opposite from the persona
he
he plays
on
on stage.
I found a lot of comics. I was surprised. A lot of comics off stage are really diffident, kind of shy. You know, like they don't have the persona that they create on stage. You know, they go into that. And you know what? If you're going to go into a persona that's not you, it's a cover in a way. Because if the audience doesn't like you, you can say, well, it's not me.
Stern's like that also. Howard Stern's like that. He's very quiet character. He's very private.
Well, I didn't want to throw Grant the curveball, but there's nobody that sticks out in your mind that's not.
Oh, I mean, you're like everybody's sticking out in my mind. Like you mentioned Louis C.K. That was a one day, that was a one-day job. I was in this scene in his show. And what really struck me about him, I didn't know that much about him. I mean, I'd seen his stand-up, and it's not that his persona was that different from that. But what really struck me about him was we're shooting this scene and we're playing a bunch of comedy writers around a writing table. That was the scene. And I'm playing the lead writer. So I'm sort of running the table. And he's one of the writers. And then there's all these other, I think, stand-ups that he knew. I think he's really good about giving jobs to stand-ups. So a lot of the guys around the table were actual stand-ups. Mm-hmm. But we all had lines and stuff like it was all scripted. And at one point, and it was a friend of his was the DP, and he had one of those cameras. With the thank you with the harness, So he's basically holding the camera, and walking around with it. So he's like walking around the table shooting, and Louis and they knew each other from childhood. They shot movies together when they were kids. So at one point, this dialogue's flying around the table, and Louis gets up and goes next to his friend, and he's looking at the little, monitor on the camera, and he's going, okay, you say your line. Okay, say it again. Okay, and then he says, and then Louis would say his line, and then the next guy, and he would be kind of like moving the camera, and then the next guy would say his line, and then he would move it to the next guy, and the next guy would say his line, then they'd say, do that again, and he'd do it again, and then Louis would say his line. He was simultaneously acting, DPing, and directing. Wow. Like all at once. And we had a little break, and I just said, how did you learn how to direct? And he said, oh, me and my friend have been making movies since we were 14.
Yeah, too bad he didn't learn how to censor himself.
Yeah. But I mean, that was like
Wow.
You think somebody just knows how to do stand-up, but you could see what a serious guy he was.
Well, again, that reminds me of Head of the Class. We had two actors, Dan Schneider and Brian Robbins, who were constantly knowing that there was work outside of acting. And, again, Howard Morris told me when Ronnie Howard was 6 years old, he was asking, why do you put the camera there when Howard was directing him in Andy Griffith's show? Wow. Why do you put the camera? When he was 6, 7, 8 years old, you knew he was going to work beyond it. You knew that Dan Schneider would become a great writer for Nickelodeon because he was always interested in it. You didn't know that Brian Robbins would someday become the president and chairman of Paramount Television, but he was always writing, directing, and he's now the president of CEO of Paramount. It's unbelievable.
Well, Grant's writing screenplays.
Writing screenplays.
The deal is, though, to wear many hats if you want to work, right? I mean, you want to work.
You have to. You have to wear many hats if you want to work. Because, who said, my associate producer, Brenda Boss, used to say, cute doesn't last.
Yeah.
So if you're a 25-year-old cute actor, cute doesn't last.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do something else.
So you have to follow your bliss too, don't you?
Yeah.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
You have to follow your bliss.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Like if you're just really wanting to do something, you just have to do it.
Yeah. So I want to close this interview with a new feature of but we'll get back to the last questions. But a new feature of what's the name of the show? Amikamuka to Mike. So I'm gonna ask you some questions like in the Actors Studio.
Millions are watching it, Frank. And you can't remember the freaking name. Millions out there.
So we may throw you with some of these questions, but we'll try. What are you reading now?
Well, nothing. I just finished If These Lips Could Talk.
And a terrific reader was, I'm sure.
Yeah, I had to let it settle in. You know, I haven't moved on to my next thing yet.
And it's like Moby Dick. It's very allegorical. There's a lot of things beyond that. You know, it's not just about a producer.
It was a great read. You guys did an unbelievable job. You really did.
And I didn't pay him to say that.
I got a question for you real quick, and not to detract from Frank's questions, but Oliver Stone. You worked for Oliver Stone, right? You were in Wall Street. Directing, you got to tell me what it was like to be directed by Oliver Stone. I saw an interview with him with Putin, and I got to tell you, he's a lousy interviewer. He was a terrible interview. He interviewed Putin. I thought he was terrible as an interviewer. But what is he like as a director?
He's a tough guy, man.
Is he?
I mean, I want to say though, effectively tough. Like I'm sure you had, you know, lieutenants in the fire department who were tough, but they were really good.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I read for Platoon, and
really,
I read. I mean, I was just starting out. I have no idea how I got that audition, but then again, nobody knew it was going to be Platoon. You know. Yeah. And I think I did that audition to the bottom of his feet the whole time, you know, that were up on his desk, and then he cast me in Wall Street, and that was a life changer for me, because that was before Murphy Brown, and that was really that was my first film, and they were coming off of Platoon. He and Charlie were coming off of Platoon, and I was. You know, we talked about fear and nerves and all that. I got to the set, and you know, one of the PAs was walking to me to my trailer, and she said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm really nervous. I'm really nervous." She said, "Well, you know," she goes, "I was talking to Charlie, and his first film was Grizzly Adams, and he was in a campfire scene where he was like eating baked beans around a campfire, and he said his hands were shaking so bad that the beans were falling off the spoon."
Wow.
And I was like, "Ooh, I kind of need to hear that. It's okay. It's okay to be this nervous." And wait, why did I get into Wall Street? I completely lost my train of thought.
You got into Wall Street because of Platoon, because of Oliver Stone.
Oh, Oliver Stone,
Did you get Wall Street because of the interview you did, the audition you did for Platoon, or?
Yeah, and that audition is back when I had courage, and I pretended, you know, it was for the James Spader part in Wall Street, and I was pretending to do lines of coke on his desk as I was doing the whole scene, and you'll see a line in the movie that says, "What's in it for?" The line in the script said, "What's in it for me?" And I'm busy doing my pretend lines of coke, and I go, "What's in it for moi?" And he kept it in the script, and I don't think I never got credit for it, but I will go to my grave saying I wrote that line. And so I really did. I had a good audition for that part, so he gave me the part. But you know, James Spader was much farther along in his career at that point, so he gave me a part of a young trader who's talking to Charlie Sheen at this bar. And about 5 seconds of that scene was me talking to Charlie, was left in as part of a montage. So then I went in for Born on the 4th of July. And again, Oliver being Oliver, like I'm on the floor, I'm playing a field medic. And we're in a field hospital, right? And I'm trying to revive a soldier who's dying. And I'm barking out orders, and I'm literally on the floor of the audition room, you know, pretending to resuscitate a dying soldier. And the scene ended, and he just looks at me and he goes, "Well, you know, that wasn't it, right?"
Oh wow!
And but he did cast me, and he gave me the part, which I couldn't do because a show ended up coming along called Murphy Brown that conflicted with the movie. So
you made the right choice.
You made the right choice, man. The right choice. And again, luck.
Let me ask you: is there anybody you worked with that you were starstruck? Just
that's a great question.
Starstruck.
Wow.
Because most actors would be starstruck when they're working with you.
Well, Woody Allen, I would think, would be make me.
Well, why
starstruck.
don't you ask him the question?
You
Why
did
don't you answer the question for him?
I'm just no. You did ask him the question.
Why don't you?
I'm dying to hear his answer.
Good.
So there's Woody, Candice, there's I was completely starstruck with both of them, right? But the one that really stands out for me was I had an audition with Al Pacino. And it was for a movie called Revolution. And it was in the very beginning of my becoming an actor. And I had just gotten this agent, and she's looking at me, she's like, "You look like somebody, Anna." And she said, "You look like a young Al Pacino," which I did at the time. I don't anymore. And
Thank
she goes,
God.
And she wasn't even my agent yet. And she goes, "They're casting this movie called Revolution. They're looking for the actor to play his son. I'm going to call the casting director." And a couple days later, I'm reading with Al Pacino, and I prepared the scene, and I'm totally starstruck, and he was my idol, and I was completely out of my skin, nervous. And we read the scene, and he's kind of looking down, and he's kind of mumbling, and he's saying his lines, and I'm acting my heart out, probably too much. And then the scene ends, and he kind of pauses, and he goes, "Give me the script. I want to read the next scene with him." So they give him the script, and he looks at me, and it's like he flicked a switch. And everything I did after that, he made me do. It's like he just brought all the power of being Al Pacino and completely disarmed me. And all I was doing was saying my lines, because he was so riveting that I completely forgot about myself. And I almost got the part, but didn't.
That's a great anecdote.
That's a great story.
That's a great story.
Great story. Oliver Stone is now revisiting the JFK conspiracy, isn't he?
I don't know. I don't know.
Derek, you would know that, too, Derek.
I don't know that.
Oh, I think he is. I think he is.
From a guy who was in Vietnam, and again, not a hero, not a ground pounder, just on an Air Force base. I had seen, De Niro's movie, the Deer Hunter,
Right.
and I saw the other one, I love the smell of napalm in the morning,
Yeah.
and all that, that which was basically,
Apocalypse
But
Now.
I
Apocalypse.
thought Platoon, Apocalypse Now. But I thought Platoon was the most accurate. I thought that was really on the money. And I called up a buddy of mine who was in Nam and decorated and wounded. And I said, "You got to see this movie, man. You got to see this movie, Platoon. It's terrific." He says to me, "Billy," he says, "it took me like thousands of dollars worth of drugs and alcohol to forget Vietnam, because the last thing I want to do is see a movie that triggers me." But he was that intense, Oliver Stone, when he was directing you in Wall Street. Like, he's just a tough taskmaster. And
he was in Vietnam himself.
yeah,
right?
I know. That was his magnum opus. I thought Platoon was his. He launched him, but he really was a great movie. I thought it was terrific.
Oh, unbelievable.
Derek always has interesting questions, so I'm going to throw it to Derek and ask him to. Do you have anything to add? He doesn't. Wow, I can't believe it.
Not on camera today.
Not on camera.
Not on camera today.
Bill,
huh?
you have any closing thoughts?
Just Eddie Murphy, ring a bell. I mean, when we're working with him, how was that? Was he intense when he was working? Was he more of a cut up? Did he have the laugh going? The donkey laugh, the Eddie Murphy laugh. I mean,
I'm really glad you brought him up, because when you said people who are least like what you thought they would be like, he was so, when I did that movie with him, he was so big at that point. He couldn't leave the hotel without 5 guys around him, it was like that kind of fame. And so he was reserved and quiet and to himself, but not standoffish. And when we would do scenes, he had a gentleness to him and a generosity that was like really made the experience, so. And he's a really cerebral you know, really cerebral. Like I think really his comedy is the brilliance of his comedy comes from his intelligence. You know, and when you're around him, you feel all of that.
That's really good to hear. That's really good to hear. I mean, because let's face it, talk about handling success. Murphy was on top of the world at 18, 19 years old.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, guys like, you know, Eddie Murphy, Elvis, I mean, they can't go, Michael Jackson, Prince, they can't go anyplace. They can't go to a movie theater. Elvis used to rent movie theaters at night, at midnight, so he could go see a movie.
Look how many of those people that you just mentioned are dead.
I know.
So Murphy handled the success, which is, go back to the Romans, you know, those whom the gods would destroy, they make successful young.
Well, he
handled it. He handled it.
He spent his spare time spawning children. So.
Yeah, but, you know, that's a small fault in a good man, Frank. That can happen to any of us. Well, what a pleasure to talk to you, man. What a pleasure. At a clinic on acting, really, especially for a layman like me to pick your brain about acting. It was really cool.
So,
you guys, that's awesome.
Yeah, let me ask you a couple final questions. What movie would you like to see before you died? One more time.
One more time before I die. Guys, I'm watching so much stuff in the pandemic. You know what I mean? You mean what would be the movie I would watch one more time?
Yes.
I don't, you know what? I don't know why this movie always comes up for me, but Jerry Maguire.
Wow. Interesting.
Yep. Okay. What's your favorite song?
Wow. Oh my gosh. What's my favorite song? Oh boy.
You can say Cyndi Lauper.
He says Louie, I'm going to call
Girls just want to have fun. Yeah.
What's your favorite curse word?
Balls.
What? Balls? Hilarious. And finally, how would you like to be remembered?
That, you know, just that I made people's lives better.
Cool.
Great.
Very cool.
Well, you've been a terrific guest, Grant. Thanks for spending an hour of your morning with us. It's been great to know you for 33 years.
And I hope we get another 30, 30, 33, Frank.
Well, I know you and I will. Billy's taking it one day. Billy's taking it one day at a time.
Frank is banking on the next 33. Better deal with the devil. Good luck on that, pal.
Yeah,
I'm taking the over.
Yeah.
Good decision. Good decision.
Great.
And no juice for you. We won't even charge you a vig.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being with us, Grant.
Thank you, man.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Great show.
That was great.
Great show.
Thanks very
Great
much.
to hang with you. Thank you.
Well, again, Billy, we've done it.
Yeah, he was terrific. Really funny guy, man, and real personable. As a matter of fact, I was doing the research. I said, this might be a tough interview for me, but just the opposite. He made things. He made it just sound like I knew him all my life. He was just a real interesting guest and easy to talk to.
Yes.
And that was a real good question. Not that I had a good question, but the way he answered it. I've always wondered that. You know, do you just you're thinking about your lives? Do you just wait till the guy stops, his lips stop moving, and be prepared for your line, or do you react? You know, and
well, you're supposed to react because you're supposed to react to what he's saying.
Yeah,
you know, that's what Judge Line was so much for subtext. You should be acting about the subtext that he's giving you, and sometimes you just got to get the words in the right order.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was, you know, you're memorizing your lines all week and you want to be able to. Another thing, doing stand-up on stage is the same thing. You got a routine. You're going to do your routine. But the less you have to think about what comes next, obviously, the more inflection you can put into it, then the more you can sell the joke, you know?
Yeah, well, when you're doing stand-up, I would imagine you don't just do the next line. You react to the audience, and the audience will take you to the next line. Ideally. That's
exactly what makes an experienced comic better than a comic who comes out. They say stand-up comedy is not individual. It's dialogue. It's not monologue. Right. It's dialogue because the audience has to. And that's like Don. You know, Don Rickles.
It's funny you say that because Don used to hate to go on Jay Leno because Jay had a list of questions, and no matter what the question no matter what your answer would be, he would go on to the next question.
Right.
Whereas Letterman, if you gave him an answer to a question, he would play off you and follow up that question with another question that was relevant to what you had just said, whereas Leno was just going.
That's really interesting.
And he said he didn't like to do Leno because it was just questions and answers as opposed to dialogue and listening.
That's
and all
really
and all interviewing is listening.
That's really interesting. When we're doing this show, I've learned a lot. We often say, look, we'll go with the flow. Wherever he goes, we go. It's like sitting in a bar having a beer with a guy, pretty much. The guy's not going to say, "Yeah, I was working with Oliver Stone," and you say, "So what do you think about the Yankees this week?" It's you're having a conversation. I mean, that's all it is.
Yep.
But I mean, this was very it was illuminating. It was really good. It was a really good interview.
Well, with that, we'll say goodbye for this week.
Wait a second. Now, before we say goodbye.
What?
There's a couple of books I want to talk about.
Okay, please do.
The holidays are coming up, Frank, and there's nothing like the gift of reading. Gift of reading, especially for people that don't read. If you don't read, Frank, you might as well be illiterate. There's no difference between not being able to read and not.
Well, Lips is out on an audiobook.
Yes, that's true. But I recommend there's 3 books I think you should really take a look at. Actually, 4. But Combustible, If These Lips Could Talk, Lamar's Gamble, and Confessions of a Bronx Bookie. They're all worth your time. I think they're worth your time.
And available at amicamookanamike.com/books/.
Wow, you see the way he's got that memorized? Now, were you waiting for my lips to stop moving before you said that, or did you have your line ready, or were you reacting?
If your lips stop moving, we're off the air.
All right, people, thanks very much. And listen, lighten up on the purse strings, buy a few books. I need the money. This guy's well heeled. I'm 1 week to the next. Come on, do the right thing. Buy a book, for Christ's sake.
Do a pity buy.
Yeah, do a pity buy.
All right, thank you. Say goodnight, Derek.
Good night, Derek.
Oh, he didn't use linguistics tonight. No accent tonight.
Next week's guest, actress on the George Lopez sitcom and the film Selena, Constance Marie.
We'll see you next week.